I am Phyllis Galde, alien, formerly known as an alien, and now I'm the editor and publisher of Fate magazine. Seriously, I was born in North Dakota and grew up in a haunted house on a farm, and most of the people in our family had UFO experiences. So I was no stranger to this, even as a young, naive farm girl. I just took it as part of life that we saw things. My brothers saw lights, and my parents, and this was 50, 60 years ago before we had any sophisticated satellites or street lights. I mean, it was pitch black up there in North Dakota. So I grew up with the ghosts and the UFOs, and it was kind of fun. Fate magazine is the oldest, longest-running paranormal magazine in the world. We are now celebrating the 60th anniversary of Fate. It started in 1948 with Kenneth Arnold sighting. And Fate has been devoted ever since to reporting on news of all aspects of the paranormal. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, cryptozoology, Bigfoot, weird science, weird archaeology. And the heart of the magazine is people's personal experiences. There's a section called My Proof of Survival and True Mystic Experiences, where people write in with their own heartfelt experiences of seeing something, and once you've seen a ghost or an otherworldly apparition or creature or spacecraft, it changes your life forever. I think it's all interrelated. Back in the old days, I guess the 40s and 50s, I believe that many people felt that at least the UFO phenomena was nuts and bolts spacecraft coming here, looking at us, whatever. But now I think it's become much more sophisticated. It's interdimensional, and there's a whole different kind of consciousness, and it's very much more complex than I think originally how people looked at it. I think they're more accepted now by the mainstream. 20 years ago, you were a kook if you were into UFOs or strange ghosts or otherworldly things. You were criticized. You were made to seem like you were a total lunatic. And I think that was a control thing. Besides, our society was probably more conservative then. It's certainly much more acceptable now. If you've seen something or had an experience, it's much more mainstream. I think it's fashionable. Some of the phenomena is fashionable, and some are not. I mean, you certainly don't want to talk about satanic things or black magic or demons. People don't like to hear about the dark things, but I think anything to do with the light, if you have an angel experience or any kind of a light, even the little grays are not always so bad for people. I think the Steven Spielberg movie, the E.T. Among Us, I think that made E.T.'s friendly. That hideously ugly little guy, but he had a good heart, and he was friendly and nice, and I think that forever changed people's understanding of aliens. Any stories that people don't agree with, we get negative feedback on them if they don't concur with their own personal views. If we have things about like the Masons or the Illuminati, I mean, there's a big argument of pro and con about that, for sure. And religion, always. Well, I guess Fate is really not involved so much with conspiracy. I mean, we all pretty much concur across the board that there is government cover-ups, that there is conspiracy, there is control of what we are allowed to know about and what we can say, but by and large, Fate doesn't get involved with the conspiracy. We are more interested in people's personal, actual experiences. You cannot deny that, no matter how you say that the skeptics say it didn't happen. If your parent died or a loved one, and they come back and present themselves to you as a manifestation or a voice, or it's something that changes your life. You cannot argue with that. Well, I think right now that there haven't been as many Bigfoot sightings, so it kind of dies down. It goes up and down and up and down. Maybe Bigfoot is a more singular creature and doesn't have technology, at least what people think, so it's not so exciting. I think the UFO thing is very, very in the forefront right now for experiences. I had an experience with a Bigfoot kind of being. in my life. In fact, my girlfriend had one too. I was used to make these Atlantean crystal wands. They're leather-wrapped copper wands with crystal on them. And they're like a focusing tool for healing or whatever good intention you want to use them for. And I had made like 10 of them, and they were lying on my dining room table. And I went in the other room, and all of a sudden I had a sense of someone in the room, in the house. And I saw psychically a very large brown furry being standing looking over the table at these things with both his hands behind his back, just like a person would do. And it was an absolutely incredible, like, oh my gosh. And he was intently examining them just as you would, like if you were in a store shopping for wristwatches or something. And it was so bizarre and so unexpected. But he was obviously very intelligent, and sometimes I can see ghosts on occasions, and this was like I was seeing it into, like he was a ghost image, but he was definitely probably, I'd say, close to 7 feet tall and brown fur, but just very intelligent, very peaceful, very quiet, just standing looking at those objects on the table. It was a neat experience. No, I think I got kind of scared then, so I tuned it out, like, oh my gosh, I'm not seeing this, I can't see this can't be real. Oh sure, because I think all little kids, I mean, I saw a ghost when I was little, and then everybody, oh no, you're not seeing anything, it's your imagination. I think all children can see spirit, can see things in other dimensions. Like, for instance, they say there's a monster under the bed. There probably is. It might be just some astral being, but we are conditioned, no, you're not seeing things. It's just your imagination, and we really kill that in children. We destroy that ability for them to float in that other dimension and see things that are of a different frequency. Every month in Fate, we have a whole variety of kinds of stories. We hit the UFO scene, we hit the ghosts, the crypto, the weird science, and it's very strange because Fate kind of writes itself. It's neat because articles come in. We'll get 2 or 3 articles on a given topic, and it's like the universe is telling us, hey, people need to hear about this. You need to write about this now. It just kind of happens. It's the most bizarre thing, but I guess it's not, considering the subject matter. I feel it's a real honor to be part of Fate. I feel like I'm a steward of the magazine, and I'm here to help disseminate information that will help people with bereavement, with grief of losing a loved one, that life goes on in the next dimension. When we depart this mortal coil, we aren't dead. We're just step into another vibration. And if it helps people elevate their consciousness and makes them free so they don't live in fear, then I think Fate does a great service. Fate magazine is available every month. It's a yearly subscription, 6 months, a year, 2 years. A year subscription is $32.95, 6 months is $20. You can find out about Fate on the website, www.fatemag.com, FATEMAG.com, and get a free issue. Just check it out, see if you like it. Or you can call our 800 number, 1-800-728-2730.
Okay, my name is Wendelle Stevens, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force. I became interested in the UFO phenomena when I was collecting information for the Air Technical Intelligence Center, and then I came up for a normal rotational assignment overseas. It turned out to be Anchorage, Alaska, where I found myself in charge of a team of special, highly classified technicians from my old Wright field that were installing special equipment aboard the B-29s, flying their target profiles to collect data on this new anomalous aerial phenomena that was being reported in the North Arctic regions. And it was so spectacular. They came on 200-foot diameter disc sitting on the ice pack on the Arctic, above the Arctic Circle, that leaped into the air and flew away with leaving nothing behind, no equipment, no stains in the snow, nothing. For us to launch a B-29, there was a sea of equipment bigger than the airplane around it, and stains of all colors in the snow afterwards. This was unique because it didn't leave anything behind. And then in another case, they came on a 200-foot diameter disc sitting on the water in the Arctic Ocean that submerged and disappeared underwater. Another one like that took off and flew away, climbed at a steep angle into the air and flew away. These would seem to be clearly beyond all technical capability of known Earth aircraft. Now, with hindsight, and after having studied the Nazi discs for years, I have discovered that in their Honeymoon program, they discovered after some aliens helped them build the first vehicle that when they tried to wash it, the water didn't hit the metal. When it was under power, there was a force field around it that made it weightless in gravity, and it could fly, it could rise and descend vertically and carry no fuel. It was a remarkable piece of equipment. But when they discovered that water wouldn't wet the surface, they tried to take it underwater in a huge lake in Austria, and it flew underwater as well as it did in the air. And actually it flew faster than anything else known underwater because the water didn't wet the surface. There's no friction. The water just parted and let it through just like it did in the air. So these remarkable qualities were discovered by the Germans way back in 1940, before the war ended, just before it ended. And so with hindsight, I have to believe that it's a possibility, a remote possibility, that what we observed sitting on the water in the Arctic Ocean and submerging could have been the Russian further development of the Nazi discs, because the Russians did capture one Kugelblitz plant, Kugelblitz research facility, intact, with all the work in progress, all the engineers, all the families, all of the technicians, all the equipment and everything, and took it up into northern Siberia where they continued the developments. But at the time, I thought they had to be extraterrestrial. Now I'm prepared to accept the idea that some of them might have been Russian evolutionary developments from the Nazi vehicle. Well, I think many are extraterrestrial. In fact, a well-known researcher came back from visiting MUFON in Dallas one time, and he was working in the American development programs and worked on our first developing our first discs that could fly in a rise and descend vertically and fly without Earth power, with special powers. And he came back from the MUFON group, and he said, let me ask you, he said, you've investigated a number of cases of contact yourself directly. And just how many do you think might be truly extraterrestrial? How many might be Earth-made vehicles? And I said, oh, 1 or 2%, maybe 3% at the most, might be Earth-made vehicles, but all the rest would have to be extraterrestrial vehicles because the beings were different. Their morphology was different, their size was different, their appearance was different. Their craft were often similar, they're often disc-shaped craft, but they had different technologies and different equipment. I said we're looking at different databases. I have only seen in fact, I've never had any real cases involving Earth-made vehicles. And he looked away, rolled his eyes and looked away, and I said, well, what would you think? He said, well, from my perspective, I would guess that 60, 50, 60, maybe even 70% of what is reported are Earth-made vehicles under various conditions. And maybe another 10% could be extraterrestrial, and the rest would be misperceptions or outright hoaxes. And I thought, gee, that's a big difference in our points of view. But he was working on the inside, developing the American discs, and his information was controlled to him. He was only getting information on other Earth developments, whereas I was selecting cases of extraterrestrial contact involving beings that were different from us, physiologically and everything. And so our databases were different. But it was remarkable, to me, it was astounding that he thought that number of cases might be Earth-made. And that was before I got into researching the Nazi discs and came to a conclusion that there could be developments. All of the Kugelblitz bases in Germany when the war ended, or just before it ended, there was 9 Kugelblitz research bases, UFO disc research bases in Germany. They successfully evacuated 8. We don't know where they went. Nobody has ever found one since. We think at least 1 or 2 are in the Arctic, possibly one in southern Argentina, another one in the Martin Mountains between Argentina and Peru and Chile. And we don't know where the others have gone, but they were successfully evacuated, and all the equipment and operational people carried away before the war ended, except for the one the Russians got. So it's up in the air now. I am prepared to believe that the Russians succeeded in further developing the discs that they captured. Now I know that the American government has operational discs that can take off from their underground bases, fly into space, into orbit, remain in orbit, and return under their own power and go back into their underground bases undetected. And we have more than one of these operational bases in the United States. We have a couple of them deployed. So it's easily conceivable to me that the Russians are at least that far along and probably further, because they captured an operational base intact where we did not. We had to start from scratch. Yeah. Well, when the form is different from ours, the bodies are 3.5 to 4 feet tall. They have disproportionately large heads, disproportionately large eyes for the heads, no ears, small noses, fleshless lips, disproportionately long arms. Those are not human Earth developments. We don't have any Earth developments like that. The cases that I have picked for study, in every case, they involved foreign beings that were interacting directly with the human contactees and visiting them regularly and had become well known to them. One group came from Reticulum, and those Reticulans told Bill Herman in Charleston, South Carolina, they came from a twin sun system, two suns traveling parallel in sidereal space. When I went to the astronomers with this, they said there's no such thing as a twin sun system, that there are many binaries. In fact, there's a suspicion that all are binary in one sense or another. But twin suns, no, they have to be binary with a period of some kind. And then just after 20 years of looking at this, they found other twin sun systems, and we now have about 8 or 9 twin suns that the astronomers accept as not being binaries, even though they're traveling together in space. So the Reticulans talking to Bill Herman told him that they had another space traveling race on another planet in their home system in Zeta 1 Reticulum, and they said that there was another space traveling race in Zeta 2 Reticulum at the same time. So there are 3 space traveling races traveling the cosmos from Reticulum itself, from just a twin sun system, 2 from one and 1 from another. And one of them was visiting here and left a lot of information. This book, Contact from Reticulum, is 416 pages of narrative investigation, and it continued after that, and I did another 412 pages on the same case. Probably for investigating the Meyer case, Billy Meyer. I was already investigating 2 other cases involving contact with human beings just like us, who said they came from a star group we called Reticulum. And then his case came up, and it had more evidence in it for study and examination than the other ones I was working with. So I concentrated on that to collect as much evidence as possible for scientific evaluation. And then since then there have been 2 more cases of contact from Reticulum that are equally profound elsewhere in the world, also involving human entities, just like us. In fact, they said that we come from a common ancestry, and in all 5 of these cases, they said that they figured in our historical records in our Old Testament in the Bible, that they have been coming and going on this planet for thousands of years. That's what I'm going to talk about, the other Pleiadian races that I was working on before and after the Meyer case.
All right, great, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Santiago Yturria from Mexico, UFO researcher. Have been working in the UFO research since 1974, and I've been traveling also. I have been in England, and I'm right now here at the International UFO Congress, Laughlin, Nevada. I work with Jaime Maussan. We have a TV show, national television, every week, and we have also a UFO magazine, a radio show, and I have been giving lectures for the past 10 years, and I'm right now giving you this interview, Alejandro. Yes, this year in the 2008 edition of the International UFO Congress, Jaime Maussan and I are going to present our latest results of our research work for the past year, and we are going to present exclusive cases never seen before, from Mexico especially, involving alien encounters. We are very excited because this year we are going to present for the first time 5 new cases involving alien encounters documented on video from Mexico City and other cities. And also we are going to present a chronicle of the recent NASA missions that I researched, and the recent shuttle missions that involved UFO encounters or UFO sightings in space. And at the same time we are going to present an update of the recent UFO sightings over Mexico, and also some very weird UFO footage from Mexico that we are very excited because they are very new sightings of a new kind, and we are going to share all this with our friends and audience on this lovely conference. Yes, I think that Mexico is the how do you say, is a milestone country in ufology, because since 1991 we began documenting on video a lot of UFO sightings, and we got very famous because for some reason the UFO activity began increasing more and more, and at this moment we are convinced and we can prove that Mexico is the top country in the world where many UFO sightings are taking place. The UFO activity is increasing. We are now having sightings on a daily basis, and we are very excited and we are very motivated because the people is very into the phenomena, is very aware, very open-minded, and is collaborating wonderful with us, the researchers, and also the media is very into the phenomena, very open, and we are now in the best of our times in this UFO research in Mexico. Well, we began experiencing a new kind of sightings in Mexico because the people began reporting seeing strange things in the sky, not only UFOs but strange, let's say, humanoid shaped entities since 2000. And then we began receiving these evidences on video of these reports. First we started receiving a new manifestation in the skies that we name it the flying humanoids. In 2001 I introduced this phenomena interestingly in England for the first time in the 2001 in the UFO conference by the UFO magazine in England, and then in the US first before presented it in Mexico. But these cases took us by surprise because we were watching a new manifestation, not only UFOs, that we were so accustomed to see UFOs in the sky, but something different, something very strange, very weird. We began watching humanoid shaped things in the sky. We name it flying humanoids. People in Mexico name it hombrecitos voladores. And this kind of sightings began increasing. So this was not just a single or occasional sighting, but began increasing. And in other parts of the country, Guadalajara, Monterrey, not only Mexico City. And this started a new evolution in our research work. And then we began receiving more reports of different kind of sightings. not exactly UFO sightings, but strange shaped things in the sky that we later name it like light beams or entities in the sky, or like signs in the sky, like angelic kind of beings that were being recorded by respected sky watchers like Pedro Avila and other ones. So we were having a wide variety of sightings in Mexico, not only UFOs and those enigmatic flying humanoids, but also a whole variety of rare sightings that we at first wouldn't know how to categorize them. But finally, at this moment, we can say that the most intense wave of rare sightings are taking place mainly in Mexico, and we have the evidences to show to the people, and we are trying to look for more answers each day to answer the question that we are asking to ourselves. Well, that's a very interesting question that we always have been asked. Why Mexico? What is so special of this country that has so many UFO sightings and those weird sightings and those weird stories and those wonderful and exciting cases? But I must say that, first of all, we officially don't know exactly, but we have some clues about it, because as our background is suggesting, we have some wonderful cultures like the Mayan culture in our background. We have also some places in Mexico that are very magnetic places, very energetic places, like the Silent Zone, for example, in Mexico City, the ceremonial sites like the pyramid sites, Teotihuacan, and all those old ceremonial sites. We have the volcanoes. But most of all, we are very confident that is because of the people, the Mexican people. The Mexican people is very religious oriented, open-minded. We are very spiritual oriented people. And since this UFO wave began back in 1991, the reaction of the people was wonderful. They were very open. They go out to the streets from their homes and from their offices to watch the sky because UFOs were appearing, and there was no panic, there was an excitement. Also the media got attracted, and at the same time our government always have been very cool about that, has not taken an aggressive reaction, has not trying to cover up. So I think all these kind of conditions settled the scenario. So these manifestations, this activity began increasing. So I think, and I'm convinced that the people attitude is the main reason why there are so many UFO sightings and so many cases and stories in Mexico. But you know, the 2012 Mayan prophecies is right now the topic of the moment, you know. Of course, we have been discussing so much about the global warming of the world and other issues, and also the Mayan prophecies that all the time have been very popular among people. Now is taking more interest, not only about among the people, but also among the scientists and the researchers. There is a lot of mystery about those prophecies, especially about the 2012. In Mexico, we have our own opinions, our own feelings about the 2012. We are not thinking that it's the end of the world. We are not feeling that this is a sign of catastrophes announced by the old Mayans. We are feeling that indeed this is, like the Mayans said, a change of our evolution, a change of our perceptions, maybe a change to our senses, and we are confident waiting that 2012 to come as quickly as possible, to come to a new era. You know, maybe all these sightings and all this activity and all these weird things that we are seeing in the sky are signs, true signs, that are announcing this change that will be concluded in 2012. We are confident on that, but at the end, and yet, it's still a mystery, and it will depend on every people's interpretation, what everybody can expect. In Mexico, we have the best expectation for 2012. Well, you see, at this moment, is more, let's say that not to acknowledge the UFO phenomena is almost naive, you know. I mean, it's more difficult to try to ignore that the UFOs exist than to understand that this is a reality. I mean, there is no question about it. The UFOs exist. This is a reality. We have been more than 15 years witnessing UFO activity. We have scores of evidence, stories documented on video, not only by normal people, but also by authorities, military, all over the world. So I think that at this moment, the UFO phenomena has proved, definitely has proved to be a reality, and we have learned a big deal for the past 50 years about it. And I think that in this new millennium, we have been so lucky to have survived and to see these new evidences that are appearing right now, telling us more clearly what this reality means to us. I think that we have now the technology and the tools to have a better understanding through analysis and study what this phenomena means, what this reality means, what its presence means, and we are now more prepared than in the past to understand and continue learning, because this is a learning process for a future contact that is going to present maybe very soon, after we realize and after we understand and accept that we are prepared for this contact, and we are looking forward to that. So there is no doubt about it, and has been established many times. UFO is a reality. The UFO phenomenon is a reality. Yes, of course. As a researcher, I feel very privileged because since the 70s, when I decided to become an active researcher, it was because I was so convinced and was so fascinated with this phenomena. And now, for all of us researchers, this is an authentic and a real crusade in which we are completely devoted, in whole life, completely devoted to this crusade, because we feel that this is our task, this is our mission. We have been guided in this task. We have been guided because we are the messengers. If you know what I mean, we are the messengers to the people. We are like the messengers who receive this information from above, these evidences, these stories, these cases, and we have to release this information so the people could learn about this reality. So we are certainly privileged, and we are very glad to feel that we have been guided from above, by other intelligence, to do this task, to do this job.
Hello, my name's Richard Dolan. I write about UFOs and the cover-up relating to all of that. My background is that of professional training in the field of history. I was a doctoral student in U.S. Cold War studies at the University of Rochester when I became interested in the UFO problem. That was in the early, mid-1990s. And in fact, I have to say that my obsession with this topic became so strong that it prompted me to leave academia and pursue the study of UFO history on a full-time basis. As a result of my interest in that, I wrote a 500-page book which deals with the history of the U.S. military and intelligence community's interest in UFOs. That book is called UFOs and the National Security State. That covers the pretty straightforward history from the 1940s to the early 70s. Volumes 2 and 3 are in progress, and Volume 2 I expect to have done later this year in 2008, covering from the year 1973 to 1991. and then Volume 3 will take it right to the present day. Well, my current project is to complete Volume 2. I've got about 350 pages of that done. I'm right into the getting into the late 1980s, so I see light at the end of this tunnel. Well, I do documentary shoots periodically. There's usually always something going on. When I speak at a conference, typically there are people who are working on different projects, and sometimes they want me to put in a word or two for what they're working on. I did a television show about a year ago that aired on the Sci-Fi Channel. That was called Sci-Fi Investigates. I had a beard for that. We traveled around the country looking at all kinds of bizarre paranormal things, including UFOs and some other things too. Disclosure is an idea. And I think it's the idea most analogous to the concept of an announcement relating to the reality of UFOs. Most people, when we think about this topic, ask the question, well, if this is such a big deal, why hasn't the president made an announcement, or why haven't the aliens themselves landed on the White House lawn to announce themselves, and so on. And so in a sense, disclosure is that from a presidential point of view. I think when you ask people what that means, it's the acknowledgement by the President of the United States or some equally elite official announcing the reality of an extraterrestrial presence on planet Earth, here and now. Disclosure has many problems associated with it. First and foremost is, can people trust the truth of any kind of disclosure coming from any political power, in particular the United States, which has been so implicated in the cover-up of this topic. We're in the year 2008. President George W. Bush is in the White House, and I think it's fair to say that the trust level within the U.S. and globally of this particular president is so low that anything that he would have to say on this would be, I think, considered problematic by a lot of people. So now, if he were to say that UFOs are real and aliens are here, it's not that people might not believe that. The question is, how is this information being presented? Is it being presented with a particular spin? Is the information being given total or complete or even accurate? The thing that people have to remember about disclosure is that if and when such an event ever happens, that we can't assume that it's going to be 100% truthful. And so people who research this topic and who care deeply about the issues involved here will have to be vigilant. It's not a matter of just simply allowing the powers that be to make some announcement and then to really control the parameters of that debate. Well, for instance, if a president were to make such an announcement that ET is here, this opens up a lot of questions, because suddenly the thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of people who have claimed to have had an alien abduction experience, suddenly these people might seem to be a little more credible than they were in years past. And so it's going to be necessary for, accurate and complete information on abductions to be forthcoming. Also, issues concerning alien technology that might be in the possession of ultra-secret human groups. This has long been an issue among UFO researchers. It may not be an issue that the general public is really familiar with, but certainly if UFO ET reality becomes known or acknowledged in our society, then we have to start asking what kind of advanced technology has been in the possession of secret military and industrial complexes. And if so, could any of these help us right now in our civilization? I mean, we're paying a lot of money for gasoline these days. The future of petroleum availability is in doubt by many people. And so whatever these objects, these UFOs, are using to propel themselves, we have to assume it's not high-octane gasoline, but something a lot more sophisticated. And so it's going to be very important to get to the bottom of these. And then there are a host of other issues. What if we discover that some of these extraterrestrials look like us, or maybe live among us. This has been discussed by a lot of people. It's been claimed by a lot of individuals who say they have knowledge on it. What if that's true? That can really complicate our politics dramatically, to suspect that, you know, your next door neighbor or some other person that you may not like might be one of them. You have the possibility of a kind of a witch hunt coming up. Or what if we learn that they have been manipulating us in various ways, that these non-humans are somehow manipulating human culture? What if we learn that some of them are really wonderful, or they're here to help us? These are all issues that are possible. And so it's going to be necessary to be vigilant and not just blindly accept anything that the government's going to tell us on disclosure. But the key is getting a disclosure to begin with, because once that occurs, then in a sense that gives permission to our major institutions, academia, the scientific community, the world journalism community, to begin to look into this and ask some questions and hopefully get some results in terms of information. Up till now, there have been a lot of dedicated researchers in the UFO field, but the fact is they have no funding to allow them to do what they do, and a lot of these people do this in their part-time to the best of their ability, but it's very difficult for any person to do this on a professional full-time basis. And so disclosure will allow the major institutions of this world to start digging into this issue and maybe getting some forward motion going. Well, citizens, you know, we talk about being vigilant, but that simply means that it's each person's obligation to educate themselves to the best of their ability on not simply the topic of ET or UFOs, but overall, to actively hunt down for information, not just simply accepting mainstream pre-chewed news that, you know, there was a study done years ago during the first Gulf War in which the University of Colorado learned to their dismay that the more TV news somebody watched, the less they actually knew about the issues pertaining to the Gulf War. So there was an inverse relationship. And they said, well, this is a great failure of American news journalism. Well, in a way, you could look at it that way. But you could also look at it as really not a failure if the goal of TV news was simply to get viewers, not necessarily to educate. If the goal is to just get ratings high, well, they've done very well. So, in other words, not just trusting your television and not just trusting your mainstream AOL news server, but it is necessary to be active and to educate oneself. Regarding the UFO issue, there are some very good sources of information. One thing that I encourage people to do is to hunt down the legitimate, provable government documents that exist on this topic. They are easy to find. There's one computer network called CUFON, Computer UFO Network. They have a nice collection of proven Freedom of Information Act documents pertaining to UFOs. There's a very good website called The Black Vault by John Greenwald, who has thousands and thousands of government documents, many of which pertain to UFOs. Now, it's not always fun or easy to go through reams of documents, but I think it's not a bad place to start. There are some very good websites and books. I do think that my own book, UFOs and the National Security State, is a good first book for people to read in order to get acquainted with the general history of this phenomenon and the cover-up that's associated with it. It's really not clear to me which political party is more open to disclosure on UFOs than the other in the United States, whether it's a Democratic or a Republican thing. It's easy for people to think that, oh, well, a Democratic administration might be more liberal in terms of releasing information on UFOs. It has happened historically that in the Carter and Clinton administrations that there was more openness on government documents, many of which pertain to UFOs. So both of those administrations were actually beneficial for UFO researchers. But it's also true that behind the scenes in the Republican administrations of Ronald Reagan, and I believe George Bush Sr., that there were initiatives behind the scenes to at least explore the possibility of official government disclosure on UFOs. Now, it's my understanding that, these were stopped as they got to a certain level. But now, for future presidential administrations, an administration that follows the Bush administration, what is the best likelihood? Is it Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, or John McCain? I think it's impossible to know, honestly. Hillary Clinton clearly has had a connection with the UFO issue through Lawrence Rockefeller. And this now is absolutely confirmable. Some of the information that's come out of the Clinton archives confirms that Hillary Clinton was meeting with Lawrence Rockefeller in 1994-95 when Lawrence Rockefeller was absolutely adamant about pushing the UFO initiative. Bill Clinton also was meeting with Lawrence Rockefeller. So would that mean Hillary is more interested in promoting disclosure? Well, not necessarily. It's really hard to know. She's never, ever really talked about this publicly. Obama has not given any indication that he is particularly interested in this topic. But none of these things really matter. And the same with McCain. I don't really know where he would stand on this. So I think the issue of disclosure is going to be more driven by political necessities. The United States is heading toward a really difficult time in a lot of ways. Financially, we're heading towards some very possible economic difficulties. And when you have economic problems, they're going to cause political instability and political problems. And in periods of political instability, you have a very strong likelihood that people will say things that they wouldn't ordinarily say otherwise. This happened during the collapse of the Soviet Union. It happened right after the death of Mao Zedong in China. It happened in Spain after the death of Francisco Franco. When you have major changes in the way politics is done in a country, major leaks can occur. And I think that's very possible here in this country. And so I'm keeping my eyes and ears open. I think the next 10 years could very well bring something big. The other thing that's driving change is technology. 20 years ago, there was no such thing as an internet, really, a World Wide Web. It was an unforeseen development. And the growth of the internet has been absolutely critical in helping to open up the UFO issue. Because what we're discovering is that it's impossible to hide this information when you have an internet. Now, what will the next 10 years in technology bring? We really have a hard way of knowing this. But I think that we're in a very, very great state of flux in terms of our technology. And so that I think at the end of the next 10 or 20 years, we're going to have a society that looks very different than how it looks today. And so what's the specific engine of change, the specific engine of disclosure? I have no idea. But I do believe that we're in such a turbulent societal transformation that at the end of the day, there's going to be some form of disclosure on the matter of ETs here on Earth. I don't think it's going to be very good for people to be completely blindsided by a disclosure of ETs that comes out of nowhere, out of the blue. There's a great potential for certain people to be disturbed if they're not prepared to have their worldview shaken. Something like this is so big that I think there is a potential for a lot of people to become very emotionally disturbed by this reality. So I think if I were to give anybody advice on how to deal with it, it's to begin the process of opening your mind right now and to educate yourself on some of the facts associated with this topic, and to be ready now to challenge yourself and your belief system, and just ask yourself a simple question, which is it possible that a lot of important things I believe about this world today are in fact wrong? You know, human beings have been wrong about a lot of things in our history. Go back 5,000 years, go back 1,000 years, go back 50 years. We've held a lot of beliefs that have turned out to be wrong. So don't you think it's kind of foolish to think that maybe today none of that matters, that we've got everything right? Clearly, I think it's a bit of wisdom to assume that we still have a lot more to learn. And let's keep an open mind and get rid of the fanaticism about whatever it is you believe, and keep in mind the possibility that there's much, much more for you to learn.